Good afternoon.
Here.
Good. How's it going?
Greetings.
Hi, everyone.
I think we're expecting maybe even close to 90 today. So
Wow.
It's an interesting experiment we're doing here by doing it this in meeting format. So Paul will do the official, but if everybody could turn off their mics, that would be great. We will use the hand raise function if we can too, as if you have questions, and then unmute. But we all know this, but in practice with this many people, we'll give it a go.
Thanks, Kay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll get going here. We're a minute or two past, so I do want to give as much time to the speakers and our all-star cast here. Thanks for joining us today for this very popular topic. My name is Paul Provo. I'm president of 6P Marketing and chair for the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce Board of Directors. On behalf of the president and CEO, Chuck Davidson, as well as my board colleagues and chamber staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Asked and Answered, Q&A with the experts. Today's event will be hosted by Kay Gardner, Program Director of Digital Manitoba Initiative. I'll begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we're meeting on a virtual platform, we can take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands, which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Before I hand it over to Kay, I'd like to introduce today's featured experts. A few updates from me relate to this in terms of our event sponsor, ExploreNet Enterprise Solutions. As a commercial division of ExploreNet Communications, this team provides innovative broadband solutions to business customers in urban, rural, and remote locations across Canada. Thank you, ExploreNet, for making this Asked and Answered event possible and free to its attendees, and for helping us to bridge the digital divide here in Manitoba. I'd also like to point out that we received many great questions today. We will be working our way through those to guide today's discussion, but should a new question arise, please feel free to use the raise a hand feature in the Zoom panel. Kay will call on you. And if we don't get to all questions due to time constraints, please feel free to type into the chat panel so we can track them and forward them to the experts so they can collect the answers and get back to you. We are recording this session, and we will email out a link to the recording afterwards, and along with some helpful cybersecurity resources. Finally, you will note that this event is being held in a meeting format instead of our usual webinar style. As a result, all attendees are displayed on screen, and we are not in listen-only mode. Please feel free to turn off your camera if you feel, and we kindly request that you remain on mute. So thank you very much. So for now, to set the stage for the discussion today. Phishing, social media oversharing, misinformation, disinformation, identity theft, carelessness in managing our digital footprint, passwords and online activity, malware and ransomware. These are all personal cybersecurity issues we deal with as our world online grows more and more. And the effects of a breach can be far-reaching and devastating for us as individuals. And when it comes to weak corporate cybersecurity practices, the reputational impact and financial losses can be enormous, and the damage can be irreparable. According to the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, in the first half of 2021, global ransomware attacks increased 151% when compared to the first half of 2020. 2021 was also marked by the highest ransoms and the highest payouts. In Canada, the estimated average cost of a data breach was $6.35 million Canadian. And in the case of ransomware, paying the ransom does not guarantee restored access to your data or prevent it from being leaked. Ransom payments may actually encourage threat actors, sorry, I just lost my spot. May encourage threat actors to target your devices again as they assume payment will be made. The payment may also fund additional illicit activities. As business leaders, how can we be sure our organizational systems are secure and aren't susceptible to an attack? How do we assess and address vulnerabilities, particularly when so many cybercrimes involve human error? I know we're all looking forward to hearing from our experts, who I know very closely for many years, and I can say I'm super excited about today's event. Kay, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate you setting the stage and for introducing me. For those of you who know me, I'm Kay Gardner. For those of you who don't know me, I'm still Kay Gardner, but I am your moderator for today. And for the last 7 months, I have had the distinct pleasure of working with this wonderful Manitoba Chambers of Commerce staff and our illustrious leader, Chuck Davidson, on the Digital Manitoba Initiative. DMI represents $15 million in funding from the provincial government, and the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce has partnered to administer the program. It was designed to help incentivize and accelerate digital adaptation by Manitoba businesses and non-for-profit organizations. If you want to learn more, please go to digitalmanitobainitiative.com. But that's not why we're here. We are here because the past 2 years have seen an unprecedented increase in digital activity. It's been a catalyst for digital transformation, and it's a big word that encompasses a lot of areas. From the Chamber's side, we've seen that our annual survey of businesses reflects this growing interest in digital issues. So for the first time ever, in our surveying, the first most important thing in the next 12 months people talked about was retaining and hiring new staff. But number 2 was digital capacity and the need to increase digital capacity. And that has not happened before. So I know that our speakers will not be surprised by this. We will talk specifically about cybersecurity in this particular asked and answered, but as questions come up, we may look at other technical areas as well. So let me do a quick introduction. Kathy Knight spent more than a decade at the helm of Tech Manitoba. She was critical in advancing Manitoba's ICT sector and has contributed to Winnipeg's success in being recognized as 2021's ICF Top Intelligent Community and made her one of our province's most recognized and respected thought leaders and ambassadors. Kathy joined the Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology as Executive Director for CyberWave, the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, on April 20th, 2021. She has since added the role of Dean, ICT programs to her portfolio. Under Kathy's leadership, CyberWave at MITT is on track to becoming Western Canada's leading center for cybersecurity training and education, as well as a catalyst for innovation within the sector. Joining her is Kent Smith. Kent is a consulting Chief Information Officer, or CIO. He fulfills IT executive leadership responsibilities as CIO or IT director for several small and medium-sized businesses in Manitoba through a firm called Our CIO, where Kent is a partner. Our CIO is a community of executive IT leaders like Kent for hire on a part-time or casual basis where they advise businesses, boards, and IT teams on digital technology. So we're going to start today with a short presentation from Kathy and Kent, joint presentation, and then we'll move into the asked and answered. Take it away, Kent.
And by take it away, I'm hoping everybody can see my screen here now. And so thank you for joining us. And today's asked and answered in the first one for the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce. We are excited to be here on why does my business need a cybersecurity plan? And I'm just looking at this picture and I think that's a younger version of Chuck Davidson there in the snapshot. So he wanted me to name drop him at some point if I had the chance. So there it is. Kathy.
Oh, over to me. Okay. Well, listen, everyone, it's great to be here. And, if you haven't noticed, the pandemic has definitely been a heyday for hackers. The attack surface has expanded dramatically because with remote work, many of you went from having, let's say, one office with 30 employees to 30 offices with 30 employees. So this means the proliferation of devices has created more opportunities for bad actors, and it's resulted in an increase of e-crime of over 400% since 2020. And the rise in attacks has also created a chronic worldwide shortage of cybersecurity talent. New technologies and evolving threats are increasing the level of cyber risk. And it's happening at a faster pace than our existing resources can handle. In fact, ICTC predicts Canada will have 53,000 jobs in cybersecurity nationwide by 2023. That's not far away. Having a robust pipeline of cybersecurity talent is a key factor in protecting our people, systems, and data from bad actors. And I'll speak a little bit more on how Cyberwave at MITT is growing those resources, but we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, we're going to start by providing helpful information on how to approach cybersecurity for your organization. So there's an old saying that your home is your castle. Now that extends to your office. So if you want to protect your crown jewels, then you need to know how to fortify your guns, guards, and gates so you don't get caught with your drawbridge down. So let's get down to it. And here's Kent to begin sharing how you can begin and how to approach cybersecurity for your castle. Over to you, Kent.
Thanks for the transition, Kathy, sorry.
It's okay, we've been mixed up before.
Yeah, not the first time. I probably have done it myself a couple times.
Yeah.
So taking your segue, certainly when we look at businesses, we often see how they think about and approach cybersecurity as how we keep the bad guys out. And we look at our assets like a castle. And so this is what I'm trying to represent here in this graphic, is that we protect ourselves with high solid walls. We have a gate, we build a moat around our castles. We maybe have some guards on watch and cannons ready to fire if need be. And these are perimeter defenses, and they can be very effective for a castle. But the reality is, if our modern day businesses were castles, they would look something more like this. Sure, a castle still has a perimeter and high walls and a gate and a moat and everything we've talked about. But there's a lot of activity going on. There's activity going on inside, there's activity going on outside the doors, and a lot of activity coming to and from. It's how we conduct business in a connected world that has created a shift in how we need to approach cybersecurity. And this requires modern day connected businesses to broaden their views on it. It's no longer about antiviruses on our antivirus software on our computer systems and firewalls on our network. And I get it, it can seem intimidating and it's worrisome, but that doesn't necessarily mean that cybersecurity measures need to be complex and expensive to be effective. As CIOs, I mean, the businesses we serve count on us as their trusted advisor for everything technology. And this includes coaching businesses, leaders, boards, and so on IT risk management and cybersecurity. And so to help organizations shift more towards a more wholesome cybersecurity plan, we often introduce frameworks such as NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology's cybersecurity framework, which guides us on how having more balanced activities, investments, controls, if you will, related to 5 functions of cybersecurity that they identify in the framework. NIST refers to them as identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And there are other frameworks and guiding principles and best practices organizations may choose to follow. This is one of them, and frankly, when you boil them all out, they're somewhat similar, and that's more of a holistic review or holistic view of cybersecurity. And this is a graphical view of NIST's cybersecurity framework and those 5 functions I just talked about: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And although the NIST framework and others can be daunting, it's once again that understanding of needing supporting activities with these 5 functions in mind that helps steward a more well-rounded approach to cybersecurity. So let's quickly discuss what each of these means to give you a better understanding of the different components. The identify function is about understanding what makes up the information technology environment. That's what are the assets, the systems, the data, and the connections. The term I've always liked is what are the crown jewels in our organization, just to kind of keep on the castle theme. What are the current risks and exposures for each? How critical are these things to the success and survivability of our businesses? It's about identifying what matters most to your business and understanding why that is. As mentioned earlier, the protect function is generally where businesses have focused their energy when it comes to cybersecurity. This is about implementing an appropriate safeguards to limit or contain the impact of a potential cybersecurity event. And I would also say this is often where businesses can invest endless amounts of money without achieving 100% protection. Detection is about having appropriate measures in place to quickly identify cybersecurity events. This is the same idea as a smoke detector providing an early indication that there could be a fire in your building. Businesses need early indication of when something isn't right. And I'm referring to the anomalies and threats which could be a cyber incident unfolding right under your nose. In IBM's latest statistic, just last year, 2021, was when they updated these numbers. I mean, they're claiming that 197 days is the average time cybersecurity breaches go undetected. This means bad actors may have a 197-day head start on you, crawling around your environment, planting malware, and capturing sensitive data. This is exactly what we need to avoid. And should a cybersecurity incident occur, organizations must have the ability to contain the impact. To comply, your organization must craft a response plan, define communication lines among the appropriate parties, collect and analyze information about the event, and perform all required activities to eradicate the incident. And you don't need to overcomplicate this. We coach several organizations that bullet-pointed notes are better than no plan at all. So don't feel like you need to create a professional and polished document. I would rather see you have something over nothing. And organizations must develop and implement effective activities to restore any capabilities or services that were impaired due to a cybersecurity incident. It's the step taken to get back to normal. So now look at these 5 functions of cybersecurity and think about your company. Do you have supporting activities, controls, and investments in all of these areas? Is there some level of balance, or is your attention focused on protect, for example, but less so when it comes to some of these other areas? And if you don't know, don't feel that you're alone. However, it may be time that you do know, especially with IT risk becoming a top 5 risk or seen as a top 5 risk within businesses today. You can seek technology services from a cybersecurity firm or engage a CIO through a firm like ours to help advise and coach you if you need some guidance. Should you find yourself dealing with a cybersecurity incident, which statistics and trending suggests you will, here's a high-level graphical view of what an incident response entails. Preparation is absolutely everything that we have reviewed up to this point, and in my opinion, the most important piece to a response. If you aren't prepared, trust me, you will be lost in the most crucial hours of a response, and you may just simply not be in a position to survive one. Detection and analysis are utilizing your tools and processes to detect and assess the situation at hand. Containment, eradication, and recovery is really the efforts needed to stop the bleeding and the steps needed to get back to normal. Post-incident activity are capturing those lessons learned so you can even better be prepared for the next one. And it also feels good to share those lessons with your peers. And I know this is a troubling thing. We don't always want to share our stories of when we were on the wrong side of this. But actually, just this week, I participated in a postmortem on a cyber incident and really valued the lessons shared from the from the CEO in this circumstance, where he walked us through their recent incident and their lessons learned. There's always something to learn from every one of these, and especially to share with your peers. So whether it's cybersecurity planning or responding to a cybersecurity incident, no different than other business activities in your organizations, the underlying components are people, processes, and technology. And there's a good reason why people is always said first, or at least I feel that there is. It's people who are accountable for cybersecurity in your business, and it's people who are responsible for managing it. And it's a shared responsibility of everyone in your business. That's your board of directors, that's your management, that's your department heads, your process owners, your staff, and IT. Back to our castles, it's the royalty and all of their workers who need to work as one to keep the castle safe. Everyone needs to take ownership and understand how it relates to their departments and their processes, and frankly, the company overall. And everyone needs to be vigilant to create what I refer to as the human firewall. In supporting people, processes, and technology, you may have an IT executive leader or an IT director or a CIO to help lead the organization through this, or you may outsource that leadership function to a company like our CIO to get access to a CIO or an IT director to fulfill those responsibilities. You may have an internal IT department to administer the technology, or you may outsource that function to an IT service provider, or you may count on internal security personnel complemented by specialized third-party cybersecurity firms that give you that depth and breadth of experience needed. Regardless of where you access it, your company will need a level of digital savviness within all layers of the business. And because MITT and CyberWave is all about developing educated and skills people, I think it's only suiting that I let Kathy speak more about this.
Thanks, Kent. One of the things that I've always thought about when I look at CyberWave and our whole approach to how we're developing a more robust cybersecurity talent pipeline in Manitoba is that we really are focusing on experience of learners, whether they're full-time students or whether they're, existing employees, the whole education and training process, the value of certifications, and the ability to build a more robust and cohesive cybersecurity community of thought leaders and talent. So at MITT, we're really addressing the demand for cybersecurity with a significant commitment to developing a robust suite of offerings in cybersecurity focused on customer experience, education and training, certification and community building. And this has meant adding significant critical technology infrastructure, as well as enhancing our offerings to meet in-demand skills required by industry through our Center of Excellence, CyberWave. Now, I want to actually get to one of the things that I often hear when I'm talking to businesses about, what can we do? Like, we don't necessarily have a big budget. Where can we start when it comes to developing our first sort of line of defense? So if we want to go to the next slide, Kent. I always get a kick out of this slide because basically, it really speaks to what Kent was talking about in terms of, so where are risks, right? We're always looking in cyber about assessing our risk and where the threats are coming from. And lots of times we think about it, it's about our people. It's everyone who works for us and everyone who doesn't work for us. And according to a 2021 data breach investigative report by Verizon, 85% of breaches involve some form of human error. But I like to sort of flip this on its head and look at this from the perspective of how our teams are actually our first and last line of defense. And this is why my recommendation in terms of where you want to start is that you should be looking at engaging all of your staff and understanding that they have a critical role to play in protecting your company from cyber threats. So social engineering, as many of you've heard that term, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will at some point or another. This is one of the key tools that hackers use to infiltrate your systems. And they prey upon emotions, and they use tactics that are designed to elicit an impulsive, immediate reaction. So, you know, anyone who's gotten that email from their boss that says, hey, I need you to go out and buy some gift cards right away. So click here. Yeah, we don't want to do that, but we've all seen things like that. And so the other thing that the bad actors do is they look to prey, and they've got, like as Kent mentioned, lots of times they've got plenty of time to source out who works for you and where some of your vulnerabilities are. And one of the things that they do is they try to perceive who are the least tech savvy or sophisticated people on your team. And those are the people that they like to target the most. So the reason that a good training and awareness plan is a good place to start is that it engages your entire team. And it's not only effective, but it's also affordable. So I'm just going to give you some really top line bullet points about what a good plan should entail. One is that it should engage the C-suite. So your leadership should be champions of this, so that everybody understands that this is mission critical. This is a priority of your organization. It's also a good project if you have HR and communications teams. This is a great project for them to collaborate on, and they can build out all the aspects of it with you. You want to design it so you can establish a baseline of where everybody is within your organization, so you know where to build from. So you want to build skills and knowledge so you can see those desired behavior changes as you move through the campaign. And finally, you also want to make it fun. If it's really dry, you're going to lose interest and people aren't going to participate. One of the things that you can do, because much of these campaigns can be automated through the use of online simulations in conjunction with other communication tools. And actually, this is something that the team at Cyberwave can help you with. We can facilitate training, and we're going to be introducing some automated simulations that will not only keep your team on their toes, but also elevate their skills, so you can see that required behavior to improve your security structure. A couple of other things that you also should be looking at seriously is ensuring that you're using multi-factor authentication and that you're using a password generator. Don't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not a good idea. So, so in addition to those solutions, we also encourage you to consider other means of maintaining good cyber hygiene. You can host MITT cyber defense student for a 7-week practicum. It's a great way to get something started, and this is a project that they can actually help you with. Also, you may have an employee who wants to upskill to a cybersecurity specialization. The other thing too is I want to kind of debunk the myth that you have to have a technology background in cybersecurity. I mean, you certainly have to understand how tech works, but you don't necessarily have to be the person who looks under the hood. I think that there's a lot of people who have great transferable skills, and this is an area where you can actually utilize micro-credentials to upskill or reskill people who can maybe start contributing more to how you implement, execute, and plan for a cybersecurity strategy within your company. So those are just a few of the things that that we can offer you, and how you can, work to improve your own security posture within your organization in a way that is engaging and effective and affordable. So you can move to the next slide, Kent. I just wanted to flag a couple of things that what you would find and what you can expect from Cyberwave. We do host a series of thought leadership sessions called Cyber Salons. And this is where you can hear from industry experts on some of the latest trends and some of the best ways that you can actually start really moving the dial on your ability to protect and defend your castle. And then we also have our students and faculty who are available to do projects with you. And I've already mentioned ability to engage with students on practicums, but we also are working with companies in terms of helping them develop online, hands-on learning experiences, looking at walking through tabletop exercises. And we will be in the future introducing capture the flag events as well as demo days. So these are just some of the things that are in the works at Cyberwave today. And one of the things that, and if you want to move to the next slide, Kent, that would be great. One of the things that, oh, this is your slide, Kent. That's okay. You know what? I'll just say a little bit about our partners and then we can zip through it and we'll go just for efficiency. So we are guided by a advisory council that has representation from both the public and private sector. We are really excited about some of our partners, industry organizations like ISACA and EC Council, as well as our academic partnerships with leading vendors like Checkpoint, Amazon Web Services, Red Hat, Palo Alto, and Cisco, to name a few. And this is all critical to the success of our students, faculty, and stakeholders. And it's an assurance that our infrastructure and curriculum and skills are aligned with industry, regulatory, and legislative requirements. So we're really excited about how we can actually contribute to making Manitoba one of the safest places to do business. And part of that is also being able to work with you, business community, and chamber members to really move the dial on that. So I'm going to flip it over to Kent now, who's going to talk about the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, Kathy. I guess I got happy deleting some slides there as we were trying to shorten our presentation, but we did throw together a few resources here for you, and we do understand that there'll be an opportunity to, I guess we'll send a follow-up email or somebody will through the Chambers of Commerce, and we'll be sure to include some more information on these resources and some other ones. But the first one here is the Chartered Professional Accountants, or CPA of Canada. They published a really interesting paper called the 20 Questions Directors Should Ask About Cybersecurity. And I think this is a really good resource for boards and executive teams to use and become more familiar with how they are managing cybersecurity and for where their attention may be more needed. And I actually also bring this in front of some IT teams as well, because I think this is a great tool for businesses and IT teams to reference and almost use as a bit of a self-assessment guidance on really how they're doing. The middle there is the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. And becoming more fond with this group here, it's really just the last 2-3 years that they've become more popular, and that might have just even been when it was formed. But they have developed some real practical resources tailored for Canadian small, medium businesses. And that includes audit programs, which you can also self-assess against or hire an independent auditor if you want to conduct on your business a self-assessment as to, how are you doing with certain controls, procedures, and activities. And something I've been paying attention to in the last year or so is this idea of they're now offering a cyber certification, which your business can achieve. And I absolutely do see a future where businesses may be expecting to have a certification like this before entering into different business partnerships and arrangements. So something to consider and watch as that matures. And then thirdly, just seeing I've brought up the National Institute of Standards and Technology through this presentation. It can be a little bit more advanced, but certainly relevant and practical. And you can look at it just from a high level, but that idea of being more holistic in your approach to cybersecurity. So I've listed NIST there, and I'll provide some hyperlinks to all three of these in the follow-up. And that's everything. So I think we are happy to move into the ask and answered portion here, Kay.
Fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate you giving us a little perspective on the castle, where it is, what it could look like, what security looks like around there. And then we do have quite a number of questions that were sent in advance of this. Maybe we'll leave your slide on with your contact information for just a little bit, and then maybe get rid of it so we can see more of each other if we need to. Please, everybody use the chat function if you wish to have your chat go or your question go to everyone. And I will start with just a couple of intro questions. And then we have some that are in different categories around costs, around insurance, that sort of thing. But I'll just start with one very specific question was, how does cloud security differ from on-premise, or does it? Kent, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I could talk about this certainly. And I think maybe when I've heard this question before, as you're thinking through cloud versus on-premise and how do you approach it from a cybersecurity perspective, the constant is that companies are accountable for their data. It doesn't matter whether that sits in-house, like on your servers that reside in Winnipeg or somewhere in Manitoba or in your offices. You're just as accountable for the data that resides in a cloud platform or cloud offering. And so with that accountability means you need to have a clear understanding as to how is that data protected, how is that those servers protected, and do you have a stable service? How are they keeping it secure? And how can they recover too, I think is another one, and recover quickly in the event that we're in a world of accepting that these situations and cyber attacks are becoming more frequent and the likelihood of happening is quite probable. So can they? And so you need to, I always say, develop a relationship and foster a relationship with these providers, but look for assurances as well. And there's many ways you can do that through service level agreements, contracts, attestations, and other validation sources. If you're working with providers, you can ask for SOC reports and certifications and similar. But I think the big thing to remember here is just you are equally accountable. As much as you're kind of throwing it over the fence saying, well, somebody else's needs to protect or serve or protect and secure that service, you are still very responsible for that data. So you need to make sure it's in good hands.
Yeah, I just add a couple of things to that because I took it in a little bit of a different way, and that was sort of the, hosting your own on-site, having your own internal security. You certainly want to have people who are assigned to that. But one of the advantages of having cybersecurity as a service, so going outside to a vendor and having it in the cloud, is that you do get that 24/7 protection, which you would probably not be able to support or even staff on your own. So there are some efficiencies and some cost effectiveness there, because the other thing is that because there is a shortage of talent in cybersecurity, salaries are highly, highly competitive. So you really, that's another consideration. So you can make some, you can realize some cost efficiencies and all of the things that Kent said absolutely around due diligence. In this similar kind of due diligence you'd want to do with any partner, especially these days. You want to know who their partners are and how they're dealing with, and if there's any exchange of data and so on. So that would be just a couple of things that I would add to that.
So I think that answers sort of where Stephanie's coming from in third party, what do you need to do? And I think that like some of those service agreements are glossed over early on, and they don't become important to people until something goes wrong. So maybe have a little check on those for your company and who you're dealing with. I think there's, in that same framework, people are thinking about, okay, what can we do in-house? What are the in-house parts? Like Leanne's comment about, do you just up your McAfee, your firewall, your whatever? There's a few people asking about that. Do you buy other tools? Do you fortify your walls? Or is that just more money and not necessarily more security? Kent, have you seen?
It's kind of all of the above.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's sort of like, that's a really loaded question. I think a lot of it depends on the size of your organization, what you have the capacity to do. I mean, we did mention a couple of really basic things like the training and awareness, making sure you're using multi-factor authentication, using a password generator. There's some of those things are really basic, But, you know, it really depends on the level of sophistication and the size of your company. And, you know, I mean, there's not necessarily a cookie cutter answer for this one, but
Okay.
I'll kick it over to Kent to see what he wants to add to this.
No, you covered it for sure, Kathy. It's you know, how much can you invest, and it's just endless. You can invest so much and not become 100% protected. I think we've all accepted that conclusion now, that there's no such thing as 100% protection. Or actually, I was joking about it this morning, just in a sync up call I was having, and I was corrected on that, saying, well, actually there is. That's if you get rid of your computers, cancel your internet connection, and go to pencil and paper. And if your business can operate that way, then sure. But it's always about understanding what your risk profile is, or I often use the term risk tolerance as an organization. And I think there's kind of a standard thought you can have is look at how do you approach risk in other areas of your business, and how does that differ within cybersecurity. And if you understand what your risk profile or your risk tolerance is, it is a bit of a guiding force there on its own. It helps you understand of that level of investment you should be making, helps guide you then as to what tools and activities you should maybe be looking into. And I think that's always such a good starting point. And, you know, if you're risk adverse, that tells you one thing. And if you really don't care and you're prepared to turn the lights out, if that was the outcome of it, just the sheer cost of it's too much, and you can sleep at night because of that, well, maybe this is just all too much for you and you don't even need to go down this path. It really depends on who you are as an organization. Not many are to that extreme. Certainly most of us are far more risk, manage our risk quite closely and tight when it comes to cybersecurity, which is why we're investing in these areas.
Yeah, and I think there's a few questions around that you kind of touched on that will just, you know, first of all, someone had asked what's the best method to develop an IT security strategy. And I think some of the slides that we have here and the stuff we send will give that sort of next steps piece that we won't go through a little more here. But talking to that risk, there's a lot of questions about how do you balance limited budget and risk? Do you buy cybersecurity insurance? Is it worthwhile to have cybersecurity insurance, or is it time to invest in different protocols? What have you seen with that?
Well, I'll dive into this cyber insurance thing, because this is a hot topic right now. I have this conversation monthly for sure, maybe a little bit more frequently. And I have a very impartial view on this. I'm very impartial with everything, but certainly cybersecurity fits that boat. And the jury's been out for me really since the get-go. And if you go back 15 years ago was maybe when I first started having conversations around cyber insurance policies. And, you know, at that point, it was a brand new offering. Nobody really knew what to expect about this. And I was very cautious, saying I wasn't sold on signing any cyber insurance policies. But kind of what's happened here in this last 10 years is they've been paying out a heck of a lot. And so I really became on board. You know, why wouldn't you get cyber insurance? It just seems like a no-brainer at this point. But really here in this last couple of years, we've seen policies absolutely skyrocket 3, 4, 5x from what they used to be. And that can make it very cost prohibitive, but there can be value from a cyber or by having a cyber insurance policy. And, you know, you might think, well, it's going to cover expense in the event you're dealing with it, and absolutely it will. And that's kind of the one reason we look at it. Same idea as if your house burnt down, you have an insurance policy to build you a new house. But, you know, one value add that I really do see out of these policies is getting access to kind of vetted and trusted response resources. These are teams that practically do this daily. And that can be worth something, especially if you are trying to, you know, focus on speed of recovery and thoroughness of recovery. So certainly give that some consideration when you're taking a look at cyber insurance.
Can I add a little bit to that too, Kent? Because there was another question. Does it make sense for companies to invest in MDR, two-factor, 2FA training protections and then self-insure? Or I think we talked about this before, some of those things you need to get in place even to just get the insurance.
Yeah, we see that all the time. And this has especially become the case in the last few years. And anybody who's gone through the process of getting cyber insurance, you would have had the Q&A, which just feels like an audit exercise, and then follow-up questions, and then follow-up questions after that. really with these cyber insurers validating you in fact kind of practice good cyber hygiene, that you have some of those fundamentals in place. And even some organizations who have had cyber insurance for years now, they're coming up to renewal time, and I'm seeing some organizations that are getting denied where the cyber policyholder or the insurer is not prepared to renew because they don't feel that they have the controls in place. And I think that risk profile has just become too high. So you need to, a cyber insurer is essentially not going to sign you on if you don't have multi-factor authentication in place and cybersecurity awareness training and testing in place, and some of those more foundational moves that would just be best practices in today's world.
I'm going to go to SG in the comments here in just a second, but just to wrap this kind of together with a couple other questions that came up. Are small businesses really that affected by security breaches, as opposed to, the bigger, large, enterprise? And then tied to that, how do you show a dollar value associated to potential security breaches?
Well, you know what, like everybody is vulnerable. So it doesn't really, in this case, size does not matter. If you've got clients and you've got data, it's all got value. And in some cases, you're also an easier target, because if you're not using some of those things, like I say, like multi-factor authentication, I mean, sometimes email is the easiest way to get into some of these systems. If you don't have things like, if you don't have those kinds of guardrails up, the opportunity for the baddies to get in is that much easier. So no, I don't think that you can really say it's about size. Remember, the technology changes every 30 to 40 days. So, it does, you have to keep up. Like, you may not be able to keep up, but there are certain things that you can do to at least keep them at bay. And you don't think that that the information that you gather from your clients or from your staff are not valuable. If you're issuing invoices and you're bringing in money, you're a target. Well,
then let's talk about the value then. Money, like, we know how to make more money, but how is it saving us money? Is it just back to risk?
Part of it's risk. I think part of it is also that partnership piece. I didn't really get into talking about it, but people are going to work more so and work with trusted providers, especially if you're partnering with other organizations and have business relationships. You need them to be in a survivable state, somebody you can count on and know who will be there and survive a cyber breach. So I think there's a growing expectation around organizations having good cyber positioning, if you will, I guess, in place. So there is an ROI, if you want to look at it that way. Is it's going to benefit you in those partnerships? But the cost of an incident, it can be minor, it can be large. And I've had this question asked to me before as well. There's stats out there, certainly, and they're always a bit challenging to see. I like to look at Canadian stats, and then you also have to look at your industry and your size of business and stuff like that. Even if you look at a Canadian stat, I kind of forget now, I think it's saying, well, the average cyber breach is somewhere north of $4 million, I think, today. Well, that's substantial. That might not resonate quite the same if you're a small business, but that cost, I always say, it can be the cost of your organization, your business. If you cannot survive it, the cost of a breach is everything, that you're not there anymore. So,
well, and I think, and we talked about this for sure, part of it is not even is intangible cost too, cost of reputation, cost of relationships, cost of your customers' anger if their data goes awry, right? And we have a really specific question that is, if you have a security breach, if your company does, do you have to report a security breach or a data breach, and to whom?
So if you're a more regulated organization, the answer is absolutely yes. It seems more, I'm not sure what the wording I would say around it. Maybe it's more advised that you do. Even the Canadian cybersecurity Center of Cybersecurity, there's a report a breach button there. But certainly there's an expectation that you are reporting this to the authorities and so on. So there's, I don't know, I've found that there's never a clear answer.
Is that the RCMP? Is that the police who, okay, they're.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, if there's regulations or compliance requirements, the answer is 100% absolutely. And if there isn't, the answer is probably yes. So it seems more and more so there's a requirement.
Yeah.
So
there is. Oh, go ahead. Never mind.
I was just going to go because we're getting close to time, and I do want to do kind of the last three. What three takeaways do you have? But I do have some specific questions around like ISO and IEC and like how does IT security strategy work with those mechanisms? Kent, maybe I think.
Yeah, I can take this.
Have some of that.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say is that, you know, in North America, the NIST framework is the more dominant framework. And, you know, I think, Kent, you were sort of speaking to some of the aspects of what's included in that framework. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, different, whether it's frameworks or any guiding principles, best practices. I mean, there's several different ways you can approach this, but at the end of the day, they're all kind of the same. If you really do boil them out, it's all about a more holistic approach to cybersecurity, kind of breaking away from that castle and moat analogy, if we want to go back to that. And you're right, Kathy, so I don't do any work in Europe, but my understanding is you see more ISO 27001 there than you would here. I see a little bit more NIST here, and that's what I've just become more familiar with. The fact that you see it here, and I do like how it's laid out. Certainly,
and we are including that, right? Just a little bit about that for everybody in the email that we send out afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, certainly from a training and education perspective, we make sure that the programming that we deliver aligns with the NIST framework.
Okay.
So, all right, as we're coming into an hour and kind of wrapping up and stuff, anybody that would like to put something in chat or would like to raise their hand and ask a specific question, now is the time. And if that is not going to happen, or if you have questions for afterwards, you have our guests' information and us at the chambers as well. But let's go into then top 3 takeaways from, if you're walking out of here, I mean, everybody's going to come from a certain different perspective, but what's number 1 for you, Kent?
Oh, goodness. Number 1. You know,
okay, 1 of 3.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think there's a lot of things I'd want to say. Really, when it boils down, I spend a lot of time coaching on this, and I think that's why it's front of mind. And it is that cybersecurity is a business risk. It is not an IT problem. And I can appreciate that organizations look at IT to help steward this, and bang on, that's fine. Just respect that not all responsibility and accountability and administration and every component of it lies on IT. It's best to have everybody in the organization involved, everybody recognizing their responsibilities towards cybersecurity. So to me, that's, I think, an important item to communicate. And it's nice to see, I'd say, just even in this last year or so, I really feel that the tide's changing around that. And I'm hearing more conversation in the executive layer within organizations on cybersecurity and at the board level or within audit committees. And that is so good to see. And I continue to support that, and I want to see more of it. So I hope your organizations are certainly talking about it at that layer.
Okay, so it's a business problem. There we go. Number 2, what's another takeaway?
This one's for you, Kathy.
Oh, this one's great. Well, listen, I fully support what Kent said. I do think there's 2 sides of the house in cybersecurity, but ultimately it is a business. It really has to be mission critical as part of your business strategy. But I would sort of get a little bit more granular and say, you know, basic stuff like in making sure that your entire team is practicing good cyber hygiene. And that includes, again, like making sure you've got multi-factor authentication, using password generators. And for your IT team, making sure that all your systems patches are up to date. So those would be, I would say, my 3 big things. And then, you know, a little plug, if you are looking to, you know, build a team, you know, don't forget to check out Cyberwave at MITT, because we do have great opportunities, and we have students available for practicums.
Excellent plug. And we have Hernan Popper in here saying, train your people.
Yay!
So
Yes,
there's
and
that.
Hernan
He
is
agrees.
one of our certified instructors. So we're glad to see him here. And
Well, there you go. We are coming right to the end, so I am just going to kind of conclude here. I'd like to thank Kathy and Kent for being here today. Over the past few years, the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce has really worked through this pandemic to provide guidance and support to members from all over the province. And so we really are proud of the collaborations we have with governments, among chambers, with organizations like Cyberwave and our CIO. We are definitely committed to seeing Manitoba businesses through recovery. And as we are all digitizing operations more and more, cybersecurity plans are just going to be essential. They will ensure customer confidence, back to insurance purposes, preserving proprietary information, and you know, data integrity is a huge real piece of our fiber as a business, right? So thank you very much for your time. On a practical level, everyone who registered here will get an email probably tomorrow from the Manitoba Chambers, which will give some of this information, links to the resources that we talked about, and contact information for us. If there's stuff like this that you are interested in and want to hear more about, let us know at the Chambers, and we will look forward to exploring further. I absolutely want to thank ExploreNet for supporting this this format and for bringing all of us together. And thank you, each one of you, for attending and joining us. So we will see you again, and stay safe and stay in touch.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Kay.
thanks, everyone. It's great to be here.